Could you get Lupe to call him a ride? I need to check on Louis.
Actually, Whitaker...
He croaked.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of The Pitt Season 2, Episode 6. This episode covers the hour beginning 12 p.m. all the way to 1 p.m. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek, and before we even get into this episode, we do need to address something that we missed from last week's episode of the show. Several people wrote into us. Thank you so much. You can always do so at decodingtv@gmail.com. Last week's episode introduced a death doula, and people were kind of acting a little strange around her, and I wondered about that. Well, it turns out that that death doula is a character named Lena, who eagle-eyed viewers will recognize as the night shift charge nurse in the pit itself. And so a lot of people recognize her. And by the way, there was a mini round of discourse online where people were saying, "Hey, sorry, you can't look at your phone while watching the pit. You got to pay attention to this show."
I'm going to throw my phone at you for not you, the metaphorical you,
not David Chen, the metaphorical you.
No, I'll do that for something different.
I mean, I'll just say, I will say that, look, I hope it is obvious that I watch every episode very carefully and take notes on what's going on. And I did miss that, and I feel bad about that. And in my defense, I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad about it. In my defense, she was wearing a slightly different outfit when we saw her again. But this episode does make it very clear that they all know each other and that, you know, they recognize her from her previous job. Also, I will say it might be a little strange to have someone come in your job as a different, like performing a different role for a family. Don't know what the moonlighting rules are in in the pit and so on and so forth.
And that's why I saw some speculation prior to being like absolutely confirmed that it was the same character. It was like, oh, it's not wild for television shows that have minor roles, like to bring those characters back doing something different when they trust that the audience might not know or care. And it's like, oh, well, maybe they just really liked working with this character actor and brought them back doing something else. Most of the audience will either go, well, that's an interesting Easter egg, or not notice. And so I think that's a reasonable, like, the fact that it turned into discourse over
a very minor discourse thing. But it actually became a meme of people saying, I don't know if you know this, like these two characters are the same character, and it'll be two images of Dr. Santos, right? Like, and it's like, did you know these are the same character? Anyway, it was pretty funny, pretty lighthearted. We did get one email that I wanted to start with. This one is from Madison, writing into decodingtv@gmail.com. I have been trained as a death doula since 2020. I had a couple of clients while I also keep full-time work, but mostly been holding workshops, hosting death cafes, and encouraging connection, community building, and education. Every death doula is different. There are tons of other more involved, more experienced death doulas who are already regularly talking to the media, but I wanted to reach out to you since I'm connected to your show. And she's talking about Decoding TV. She's a listener. Side note, by the way, I did not know about what a death cafe was. According to Wikipedia, a death cafe is a scheduled nonprofit get-together for the purposes of talking about death over food and drink, usually tea and cake, end quote. Also, they've been held in many countries. I think that sounds awesome. If there was a death cafe near me, I would go to one. I'll just put that out there. But moving on to the rest of Madison's email. As for the depiction of the show, my initial impressions were mixed. I've started an active conversation for alumni of my same training program, and my mixed impression is also reflected in their responses. I was very put off by her, aka Lena, barging into the room, though it was explained by her familiarity with the hospital, the department, the doctors. Still, those blurred lines are very important to keep clear in our work and emphasized greatly in every reputable training. Because the lines can be so blurred and death doulas fall between healthcare and death care and bleed into grief management and transition care, I feel it's super important for the public to be discerning in who they choose to guide and assist them. I try to be really transparent about my training perspectives and motivations. I find many death doulas just go for it in the framework that many people are not so serious about being qualified for the job, which doesn't jive with me. End of life is one of the most important parts of many people's lives, so it worries me when lines are blurred and things aren't taken seriously, end quote. Thank you, Madison, for your perspective writing into decodingtv@gmail.com. I love that we have healthcare experts writing into us at decodingtv@gmail.com and like reflecting on what happened that week. Please continue to do so, or also comment on YouTube at youtube.com/@decodingtv. We'd love to hear from you. But yeah, Patrick, reading this email, I think this Lena is inherently in this odd situation because she is a hospital employee, but also this couple's death doula. It's just a strange situation for all because, like, in what capacity is she operating at any given point in time, right? Like, whose interests does she have in mind at any given point in time? Her own, the hospitals, the couple she's the death doula for. I do think that would be a potentially messy situation. Doesn't seem to have like been too bad in the show itself, but I do think that's worth noting. I also appreciate Madison's perspective on. To me, the idea of a death doula feels like it would be a territory ripe for scams and grifting. I don't know if you feel that way. Like, people who kind of can market themselves as death doulas and there's no, like, as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but there's no like official accreditation process or well-known accreditation process for it. And so you can easily see people just kind of asserting that they are and not having expertise and so on. So it's kind of an interesting area of study. I do hope it's more institutionalized and like accredited and so on and so forth. Patrick, any reaction to any of the above?
I think in the show, I can imagine it doesn't seem like the show's going to explore any friction between sort of like the dual roles. But wouldn't shock me if somebody wanted to specialize in like being a death doula in which you sort of knew the hospital infrastructure that you'd be interacting with.
Right.
Because that seems like that would be a point of expertise for, is like, I know how like the neighboring hospitals work, like how they operate, how best to make sure that you are covered and getting the care that you need. I don't know if that's like a selling point that someone like, offering those services, but that does seem like something that would seem appealing where it's like, hey, if anything goes wrong at home, we always know that we're going to be at this hospital because it's the one that's closest for emergency care. The fact that somebody understands like even just physically how that place operates, like seems like that could be a source of comfort. Like where's the bathroom? Like where's coffee?
Right.
Just basic things like that seems like that could be helpful while you're navigating such extreme situations.
Yeah. I will say, I think this episode of The Pit really clarifies exactly what some of that weirdness was in last week's episode. So we'll talk about that momentarily. Okay. Patrick Klepek, let's talk about some of the cases in this episode. I will say there is one big case this episode, right? And that's the case of Louis. And why don't we save that? I will say let's save that for the end because there's like another lot to dive into there. But I would say I was looking over all the other cases, and I would say they're mostly pretty minor compared to the Louis case. So let's talk about some of the other cases first, and then we'll get to the Louis thing because there's probably a lot to dive into there. So we do hear more from the case of Jackson, the guy who was very aggressive and got tased by campus security. It turns out it does seem like he is having some kind of psychotic break. He's experiencing auditory hallucinations, paranoid delusions, and it's been going on for months. Very concerning. Dr. J, aka Dr. Javadi, has this very her bedside manner in general is pretty bad, I would say, and she has a very challenging moment when she says, "Oh, we're going to figure out what's wrong with your brother," and that's like triggers his sister really bad. Mm-hmm. And it did make me realize, in general, doctors don't say we're going to figure out what's wrong with you. Like that's generally like bad language. Yeah, what do you think, Patrick?
It seems like that's maybe something that she could work on. I mean, it's interesting. I clocked what was going on with this case almost immediately once they started talking about like what he was experiencing. One of my best friends, their older brother, had essentially the exact same thing, not being tased by campus security, but it is
hallucinations and
with schizophrenia specifically is something that can like I think we associate a lot of mental illness or just like brain deterioration as something that happens as you get like much older and don't associate with younger people, but it's actually not uncommon to experience a psychotic break, schizophrenia specifically in college. And that's what happened to like the older brother of a friend of mine, in which perfectly happy going to train to become in business, and all of a sudden started experiencing hallucinations, and it sucks. I mean, it's an awful, awful diagnosis in which, I mean, it runs a spectrum like anything else, but like my own experience with it in my friends and family is like you take pills that like turn you into a different person, and you don't take the pills and it turns you into a different person. And
Yeah.
it's a really awful thing to weigh on the individual and the family around them.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious to see how, like, what angle they're going to take in the show, because I don't think we fully know yet. We just get a little update on the case this week. There is the case this week of Brandon Lee, who fell off a motorcycle pyramid at fast speed. He was wearing a helmet, and they were trying to beat this record of 40 men on a motorcycle in formation. Dr. Robbie bonds with him over their motorcycle appreciation. I love the quote where he says, 4 wheels move the body, 2 wheels move the soul.
Hell yeah, brother.
You know the old saying, 4 wheels move the body, 2 wheels move the soul. You're gonna be living the dream.
Thank you, Brandon. Not everybody down here feels that way.
That is beautiful. But there is a couple of notable things about this. First of all, like my wife watched all the episodes of The Pit in one sitting over the course of the last couple days, or like, you know, a couple sittings. And when you do that, the show gets really repetitive. Like, she's like, I don't know if you know this, but there's a big tragedy at Westbridge or whatever it is, you know. and she's like, did you know that, David? Like, do you know that there's a big tragedy? Because they've mentioned it about 500 times in the show. But like, if you're watching it week to week, it's not that bad.
I don't think they would make as many contextual references if it was a show knowing that it was going to be dumped, 18 episodes at once, as a season.
But the Dr. Robbie's motorcycle visit is like one of those things where it's like they keep coming back to it over and over again. Apparently, he's traveling 2,000 miles to Alberta, which, here's the question, Patrick Klepek: is that going to happen? Is that going to happen? Do you think Dr. Robbie's going to make it the 2,000 miles to Alberta? Everyone in the hospital seems to doubt it's going to happen.
I think he's going to go, and one of the closing bits is he's going to put on a helmet, and then he's going to ride off into an awful green screen. That would
be the most preachy sort of way for the show to end. Which
that would be the Pit. Like that's
it would be
the
well
Pit
within
preachy.
character. Be extremely within character. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. The other prediction you made is that he's going to get hit by a car and not have a helmet on. That's going to be very bad.
I'm feeling less confident in that one now. I feel like it's just an ongoing bit about him, the motorcycle, and his lack of a helmet. But I don't think because of the main case we have this week, I was like, I think our trauma moment is there.
We've already seen a guy get obliterated while being on a motorcycle, and then a guy survived being on a motorcycle, and it might be like a hat on a hat to have like another guy
our
survive.
Main character. Yes, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. There is this wonderful sequence where one of the nurses teaches Ogilvy and the others to like how he does the stitching up, and it's a really beautiful moment. You really get a sense of like, oh, this, he's like, this is how I do it. And you get a sense that within the realm of what these medical workers do, there is artistry, right? There is technique and artistry and learned skills that you can't read in a book. And I did just really appreciate that sequence where he's kind of showing the other doctors like how he stitches this guy up, and the guy is filming his own leg getting stitched up, which is very funny. But anyway, I wanted to call that out. It's like this art form, and it is actually really beautiful in my opinion. So that's Brandon Lee. Any thoughts on that, Patrick Klepek?
No, I did really enjoy. It was an opportunity for also like a new a member of the cast to sort of flex what they're good at. Like what is their oftentimes this character, like it's neat that they get to demonstrate a real expertise they have that is acknowledged by the other staff, and not just like kind of comic relief guy who's like talking about being stressed about being a dad. Like he's a fun, I like the actor, but like the character doesn't have a ton of depth. And I thought it was neat that this adds like a real bullet point to a character that we don't know a ton about.
Absolutely. And we also saw him in the scene with all the dads, right? If I recall correctly.
Yes. Not one of my favorite scenes.
Why was that? Why was that?
It was just it was eye roll corny.
Okay. Moving on. There was the case of Rocky, the hot dog eating contest guy.
Uh-huh.
I did think it was very funny when he was trying to communicate how many hot dogs he ate, and he said he was trying to do 351, like 36, but Dr. Langdon interpreted that as 351. This is what Patrick Klepek would call filler stuff, right? This is the filler, literally, in many cases. Similarly, there's also the case of Mr. Francis, who's worried the clot in his leg will spread, and he always asks for a D-dimer test, which, by the way, I have a lot to relate to. I don't know if you know this, Patrick Klepek, but a few years ago, I had a clot in my left arm.
Mm-mm.
I got a blood clot in my left arm. My left arm swelled. It was like a Thanos hand. Like it was like,
I do remember this now.
right.
Yes.
And I had to be put on Eliquis, which is a blood thinner. And that's literally what this guy was on. And D-dimer test is something that tells you whether or not you have a blood clot. And this guy always comes in and always asks for it. And I was like, wow, that could be like me in, 2 months. So anyway, yeah.
One thing that I wonder how the show will juggle in the future is I do think one of the bits that the Pitt season 2 is struggling with is an expanded cast. We really only had one character leave, and they sort of left 2/3 through the first season, and otherwise everybody came back. But also we have new characters, and the show's doing like an okay job of like bouncing between things. But I do feel like there's a little bit of stress testing that is happening in the show, and like some of the real fun of the first season was we were always hopping between everybody we knew, like moving from thing to thing. And now there's just a little more, like the show gets nervous, like, shit, we haven't had so-and-so, like what's Langdon going to do? Like in this, and feels like that stuff came a little more naturally in season 1 and feels a little more forced in season 2. It's fine. I don't think it's a big deal. But mostly I wonder, as the show goes on, there's the natural impulse to have new characters.
Right.
But like at a certain point, if we're just in this area, we're not in the whole, you know what I mean? The whole hospital. How does the show handle the cycling of characters and the balancing act of giving them meaningful screen time? I think it's something that, especially in season 3, will become a more complicated issue.
I agree, because I mean the problem is that they introduce all these doctors and nurses, and they're all very beloved, and you don't want to cycle them out of the show, right? Yeah. By the way, Brandon Mendez Homer is the name of the actor who plays Donnie Donahoe in the show. That's the actor who we were talking about earlier, who's doing the complicated stitching technique. Just wanted to give him a shout out. Wanted to make sure I said his name. But yeah, Patrick, I agree with you. It's going to become very dicey. Okay, what else did we experience this episode? Harlow Graham is another patient. She's the deaf woman, but she's having some kind of stomach ache, might have passed out, but they don't have a translator for her, and so they can't talk to her. Dr. Santos cannot assess her yet. I was wondering why they don't just like use a computer and type it out. That was a little odd to me, but I guess having a translator is something that's necessary in situations like this. We learned a little bit about the functionings of the ER. There is something called ABCD. Have you heard of the ABCD approach?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's ABC. That just leaves 2 letters. Tell me about D, Dr. Santos.
Disability.
This is according to, I'm reading here from the Netherlands Journal of Medicine. The ABCDE primary assessment in the emergency department in medically ill patients, an observational pilot study. Basically, it is a structured approach for what happens, how you assess patients when they first come in. A stands for airway, which you assess for airway blockage or cervical spine injury. B stands for breathing. C stands for circulation. D stands for disability, or E stands for exposure. So I think like with one of the patients, I think it might have been Brandon, who they were like trying to assess like what was going on with him. They used the ABCD approach. I'd never heard of this before, but pretty interesting stuff. And the show is very didactic in how it goes over these things, but I always appreciate it because it gives you a lot of stuff to learn if you want. Patrick, you predicted, your predictions are just coming true on an almost weekly basis that eventually Dr. Al-Hashimi's AI approach would yield some errors, and that's exactly what happened. Dr. Santos, overwhelmed with the amount of work she had, tried to dictate something, and then ended up like the patient history was wrong, and the other doctor in the hospital was wrong, and there were typos. And Dr. Al-Hashimi then had to say, "Hey, FYI, like you can't trust it all the time. You still need to proofread it, you know." And Dr. Santos was very sheepish about it. But yeah, any reaction to that, Patrick, now that you've been vindicated yet again in the show?
I think Dr. Al-Hashimi should go fuck herself.
Wow.
That was like a really irritating exchange.
Wow.
I like her
Tell me why it was irritating. Tell us why it was
I would just
irritating.
like to dismiss it. Like, it is one thing to, and I think it's actually a very interesting part of her personality where, like, as we'll get into, like the case with the, with the man from prison, in which it's like, and she has a line along the lines of like, even if the system is flawed, we shouldn't stop trying to improve it.
Right.
Worthy cause. Like,
yes.
People can get stuck in their ways. And I think part of her character is meant to be like, hey, like the traditional ways of doing things are good, but there can be new ways of doing things that are also good. But she also can't seem to like take any criticism of her ways of doing things, and that it's possible this is a well-meaning but flawed and potentially dangerous avenue to try and improve like the lives of patients and doctors. And so I found her the woman who comes up, I think, from surgery. Is that like who comes down
I
to
think
complain?
I think that's right. Yeah.
She's just so sharp and mean about how she feels with the situation that it felt a little audience surrogate. Is like Dr. Robbie's not going to be that way. Like, he can be mean, but he's mean in like a disappointed parent sort of way.
He's very like nasty to people.
Right. And she was nasty. Like she was like basically a middle finger like over the situation.
Like, get your house in order. Like, I don't give a shit about what robots you're using down here.
Yeah, I don't really give a shit whether or not you want to use robots down here. I need accurate information in the medical record.
Understood.
Okay.
And I think that's fair, and a fair critique of her broadly good faith approach to wanting to make things better for everybody, but not acknowledge or like hand waving the parts of that don't work well. Like improvement for improvement's sake, or like it's all aesthetic, is not actually improvement. And frankly, it seems like a through line here is going to be everyone just sort of like watching Dr. Santos fall apart. And I'm very worried that she is going to make some sort of mistake or some sort of error. Like, she's falling asleep at her desk, and instead of going home, she gets a 5-hour energy drink using generative AI. Like, she is clearly
struggling.
Let
me defend Al-Hashimi for just one moment, and say that, hey, if she had
the AI defender has logged on.
If she had used, if Dr. Santos had used it in the way that Al-Hashimi told her to, then we wouldn't have come up to this problem. But I think the problem is that people don't use AI the way they're supposed to, right? Like, this is an actual problem in our real society, right?
Sure.
Now. People don't use AI the way they're supposed to. What I mean by that is they trust AI 100%. Is what's happening right now, right? Like, it's just like, oh yes, ChatGPT. You've probably heard this from somebody you used to trust. Is ChatGPT told me? Oh yeah, ChatGPT said that's fake. ChatGPT said this. ChatGPT, and it's like there is no amount of critical thinking that is applied to the situation, nor an understanding that ChatGPT hallucinates, makes things up, is flawed.
I mean, what I'll defend about, like,
let me just
sure.
Go ahead. I want you to talk, but like, I'll just say in general, putting aside the pit, not even talking about the pit, I am shocked the extent to which what I just said is a phenomenon. Like if you had told me, oh, by the way, this thing that makes errors all the time, people are just going to trust it unquestioningly within the span of like a couple of years, I would be like, oh, that is really surprising to me. Like, I would hope people had more skepticism. Nope, not happening, and it's creating a lot of problems. Anyway, go ahead, Patrick.
I am not shocked. I think most people, like I said earlier,
most people are sheep. We live in a society of sheep, and they'll.
I think most people go to, like, when they say, how did the term like Google it come about? It was a sense of like trust and authority that comes from when I search something. What comes up at the top of that hierarchy will be informed information that I could just pass on to somebody and generally trust it was true. I think people have transferred that to AI, and there are problems with that, but I don't think it is like a collective sheepish failure as much as like we look at computers and we ask computers questions and we trust that when computers give us answers, those tend to be true. There is a different hierarchy of standard when it comes to like medical care and like who won the Super Bowl 20 years ago. And like if ChatGPT gets that wrong, like, all right, well that stinks, but like
I see.
No
so
big
you're
deal.
like you just think there should be a higher standard for medical care than there is for like general society.
Yeah, I think
I'm bothered by both, FYI. But go ahead. Anyway.
I'm bothered, but don't blame. Like, I guess I put the blame at the companies producing that software and instilling that sort of blind faith more so than people like type into a magic box and it seems to give an answer.
No disagreement. You're right. I actually agree with what you just said. Like, I think
and like that 2%, is it 2% that like Al Hashimi always like, well, 2%, you know, it works 98% of the time, whatever the number.
Yeah.
Well, that 2% is like much more important when I'm like doing a query about
my medical history.
Like I'm watching the Olympics and it's like, who's won the, you know, like the slalom skiing for the last 10 years? And like ChatGPT gives me like an easy to read, like someone doing that. Like that seems to make more sense than like I'm going to put it in a medical chart. Like I just, people are tired and overworked in those places, and I think applying some skepticism makes more sense in that specific context.
Right. I think where Al Hashimi went wrong is she should assume the worst about how people will use the technology.
Yes.
And I don't think she has
she assumes the best.
Yes.
And it's like people are tired, unable to chart, and they'll use AI and then double check it. No, much like what I just said, the same applies. No, they'll take the AI, they'll just input the data and trust that it comes out. And so the system has to have redundancies in place to check for that, because the average person is going to, in this case, the average doctor, the average laborer is just going to, well, they told me to use the tool, so I use the tool. I think that is fairly reasonable on like Santos's part within the situation that she is confronted with.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I'm just going to put this out there, Patrick. The great sci-fi author Ted Chiang said that we shouldn't call it AI. AI is a misnomer. And
agreed.
What is a better term for it is applied statistics. If we called it applied statistics, if we called ChatGPT applied statistics, I think we'd have a lot fewer problems in our society today. I'm just going to put that out there.
People would look at that and go, boring.
Yes.
Sounds like that's for nerds.
All right, we got a brief update on the baby that they found in the first episode. The baby's still doing okay. Also, we learned what is the deal with Kwan. It turns out she doesn't want to be an ER doctor. She is actually shooting for pathology. She likes medical mysteries, but doesn't like dealing with people. So, good update there.
Hey, the baby's got to do something. I don't really care that the baby smiled. Like I got to be honest, like baby update in every other episode. The baby can go away. The baby's not a beloved character in the show that needs an update. Wow. When there's a shoe to drop about the baby, it just seems it feels like every other episode, it's like we need 30 seconds with the baby. To do what? Oh, nothing? The baby's fine again? Like, great.
Wow, I had no idea Patrick was so anti-baby. There are some.
So I tell my children all the time, you know.
There are some very preachy aspects of the Pit this week. Okay, a couple preachy things. One preachy thing is
that could be its own segment, David. Like Doctor of the Week and like
Doctor
Pit, the preachy Pit. I don't know. I got to work on the title, but like
the Preach Pit. Or
welcome to the Preach Pit.
Welcome to the Preach
about
Pit.
What Pitt got preachy like about this week.
All right, so there's two things I think the show was very preachy about this week. One of them is there's a patient who's aggressive, right, towards one of the nurses, and Dana puts him in his place, and she rips the placard off the wall. She's like, aggressive behavior will not be tolerated. And it is true that in the post-COVID time period, people's level of aggression towards service workers was dramatically increased, and it is not okay. And I agree with that. Also, admin from above sent down a bunch of donuts instead of actual things that would help them do their jobs, which is very realistic. And
yes.
It's very like, hey, we're doing you worked your asses off to get the Q3 numbers in. We're doing a pizza party instead of giving people money or whatever it is. And so Those are the couple things that the episode was quite preachy about this week. Also want to point out, by the way, the thing we opened the episode with, talking about Roxy, the woman who is like kind of in hospice care and with the death doula and all that stuff. And we kind of get a better sense of what was going on with that story. My interpretation of what's going on with Roxy is she has given up. She doesn't want to do this anymore. And her husband is still like really in it and wants to help her. But she's like, hey, I can't, I can't go on. And like, he wants it more than she does at this point. And she doesn't know how to tell him that. And so that's like what the awkwardness is. Like she's in so much pain. She's been doing this for so long. She's seen how much energy it has taken from him to help her, and doesn't want this anymore. And what that means, we don't know until the next episode. But yeah, that's my interpretation. They can't get her on morphine, so they have to give her a morphine pill called MS-Contin, and try to set her up well. But she just really doesn't want to proceed. She wants to like stay at the hospital. She doesn't want to go back to her old life. Patrick, any reflections on that particular subplot?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting setup where it'd be very much more like stereotypical, relatable setup where like you have, the husband just like incapable of being like helpful and useful, and this instead like it's every portrayal is like he's at her beck and call. He's taking care of everything. The load is not too heavy. Like he's not having an emotional breakdown. Like he's there. He's present. Like he's ready to take on more. And she's like ready to say goodbye. And she doesn't know how to explain that to him. How does one come to terms with that when you have like young kids too? I mean, like I'm ready. Like that is, like I'm not excited for that story to come to a conclusion. Cause
right. Like there's no easy way to discuss that. Right. Like,
no, because how does it not feel like from her perspective, like, are you letting your family down by like being
dying?
Like just not wanting
right.
to do this
right.
anymore? Like, what are you, the same way that, not to trivialize a human life to like a pet life, but like when you have like we just went through this as a family, like when you have an aging pet, there becomes questions of like, are we keeping this pet alive for us or for them? Yeah. And I think she is experiencing like, why am I here?
Right.
Am I still
who am
here?
I really staying alive for?
Am I staying alive for myself?
Yeah.
Or am I ready to accept the situation? And I suspect that she is going to pass in the hospital, and that's going to be brutal, especially because I sort of get the sense that she just wants to do it without her family there. And we'll see.
I don't know that there's a way. I don't think they can assist her in suicide, right? So
I don't think they're going to do that. I just think if she stops holding on, I don't think there's a lot keeping her in this mortal plane, I suppose, is how I feel about it.
Right. And yeah, I do think it's an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I talked very briefly last week about my wife's long-term medical. She kind of this chronic condition for a while, and her thing was never life-threatening, but it was a thing where the patient often experiences a lot of guilt from like how much it costs the other people around them. I talked a little bit about this last week, and I think like we saw that really come to a head in this week's episode of The Pit. One final story before we get to the big one, which is Gus Varney, who had 3 rib fractures and apparently is malnourished, which is a shock. Dr. Al-Hashimi wants to keep him there and help get him into a good state. And Dr. Robbie is like, hey, we actually don't have enough room for people who aren't in prison and don't have a prison infirmary and so on. And so it's very anti that. And it actually causes Al-Hashimi to kind of lose her composure at Dr. Robbie. But then Dana comes in and talks to him and kind of seems to take a liking to him. And wouldn't you know it? His vital signs are impacted enough that he actually has to stick around. So anyway, I thought that is kind of an interesting plotline of like people taking matters into their own hands and manipulating the system to facilitate an outcome. And it's really just what Dr. Robbie would have done if he felt that way. Right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, okay, let's talk about the final plotline. the character of Louis, who doesn't have any lines this episode, but whose presence looms very large. I do want to say there is a moment early on the episode, Patrick Klepek, where he's got like blood spurting out of his mouth, and then it cuts to somebody drinking it out of a red juice box. Like, I don't know if
I
you
didn't
saw
catch.
that.
I didn't catch that transition.
And that is diabolical. Like, and I'm like, what are you even trying to do there? Like, it's
That's
I guess
someone in
it's
the
kinda-
edit room realizing, okay.
Oh,
Sit with me here. Sit with me here. Sit with me here. Is this cool? Can we do this?
right. Like he's like spurting blood. Cut to someone drinking out of it, and it's like the same angle. And it's like, wow,
Beautiful.
the Pit. That you have a sense of humor. The Pit has a sense of humor. Like, I always just feel like behind the scenes, like there's just somebody like kind of like gleefully being like, yes, we're showing them the horrifying stuff. Like somebody's just
I mean, in a
gleefully
show
doing it.
that is full of a lot of sadness, I imagine I'm not shocked. There's a little bit of a B movie, Sam
Right.
Raimi vibe
Yes,
on
absolutely.
set.
I agree. Anyway, so yeah, Louis passes away from a pulmonary hemorrhage from liver failure. Again, Patrick, you called this. And he was not a candidate for PCC or ECMO, which are things that you could use to try and keep someone alive in that case. It's very, very sad. You see how his death hits all the characters around the Pit, other than Ogilvy, who is a complete asshole about it. Ogilvy, by the way, giving off really serial killer vibes, in my opinion. Like, just
I'm
the vibe.
every episode. I cannot wait to see the shitty thing that happens to Ogilvy.
The vibes are terrible with Ogilvy.
They are.
But we see Dana and her nurse trainee clean the body. She kind of talks through what happens to people when their bodies are unclaimed, when they don't have any family. I should have put this in the Preach Pitt segment, but she goes over this part about how, hey, by the way, like nurse burnout is incredibly high. Lots of people broke after COVID. And by the way, all that's true. Like, I support everything she's saying is true, and it deserves to be given more attention and increased awareness. And also the Pit is extremely preachy, So anyway, and then they bring Louis into the viewing room and share memories of him, and it's very touching. And then we find out what actually happened with this photo of his wife. It turns out that people are spending time trying to figure out, like, who's his wife, like who's his emergency contact, and they actually call the emergency contact, and it's actually the Pit. So it's like, okay, well, that was anticlimactic. But anyway, Robbie comes in at the end and reveals all that Louis' wife was Rhonda, his high school sweetheart, and they got pregnant. And a month before the baby was due, Rhonda and her baby were killed in a car crash. And with that moment, you really get it's like, oh, this kind of side character who was very one-dimensional, maybe, like it just fills in like the whole backstory for you with one moment. Patrick Klepek, what was your reaction?
Well, and especially it takes a character that we've grown a great affinity for over the course of a season and a half ish. Louis is like one of those constants, both in the world of the show and also for us as the audience member. I think one of the things that the show does, and it's like the better elements of like the preachy parts of the Pit, which is that it looks at the unhoused, it looks at the people with chronic issues, and does not reduce them to just a medical problem to be solved, right? Like Louis comes in all like they were going to give him a beer, you know what I mean? Like as he was about to be discharged, like they understand that there are limitations to what they can do to quote solve his chronic issues, but they don't see him as a lesser person or a person unworthy of like their love and affection and friendship in the relationship that they do have with him. And I think that is a noble pursuit of like the show's like glass half full sort of optimism that drives a lot of it. I think you kind of don't get there without the preachy. I think that all spills out of the same place, and I'm willing to take everything that the show is willing to give in that regard, because I think you end up with more complicated characters like this, and it does seem like the show makes that a point of emphasis is to like have between the inmate or the other unhoused individual whose character name escapes me, but who they clean off, get fresh food, get food, try to offer services.
Right.
It's unclear to me. Feel free amongst our audience that has more understanding of the medical system. Is it normal for a hospital to care this much and make sure they get sandwiches, find ways for them to stay? I realize some of it is melodrama, but I'd be curious how much of this extended sort of services or attempt to help those in need is part of the process, or is sort of, hey, this is the kind of show, kind of moralizing. We're doing it we wish this, in a
Right.
the same way that Hashimi says, in a flawed system, try to do better. Is the Pit portraying what a flawed system would do if it was trying to do better within its own constraints? Or is some of this, sort of standard practice, or would not be unexpected in a health system?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think with regards to the Louis situation, Dana sums it up like these regulars can be annoying, but then you miss them when they're gone, right?
Yeah.
Louis is somebody who came in all the time, and some, they seem to get along with everyone, but sometimes it's like, hey, shouldn't we be applying our resources to other people who didn't choose to come here, or couldn't, are here not by dint of their own actions? But then when they're gone, you kind of realize, all the moments of connection we had over time, it actually becomes very poignant and profound. And I thought it was a very beautifully done subplot in this episode. The whole episode was kind of focused on this. You see it the news reverberate through the whole place. It's everyone learns throughout the thing, and especially Whitaker, he really takes it hard. It's it's really, really sad. It deeply moved me. I don't know if
Same.
Did it get to you? It got to me. It
did. I didn't cry, but it definitely.
I cried a little tiny bit. I got
tiny
misty.
bit.
I got misty a bit, yeah.
No, but it was just beautiful. Again, I liked it with the show, whether it's somebody in his unique circumstance or elsewhere. Again, it's a show that often is looking for the humanity in the darkest moments of people's lives, and that's part of why I like the show.
Absolutely. All right, Patrick, we are going to try to wrap up every week with our Doctor of the Week or Medical Worker of the Week. Who's your Doctor of the Week, Patrick Klepek?
Related to the Louis storyline, Dr. Whitaker, for a very specific moment that stood out for me, was he was the primary care doctor for Louis during this specific instance. And there's a moment where they have a number listed as an emergency contact for, you don't know if it's next of kin or what the relationship is. You just know it's just in the system. And on one level, most of that setup is kind of a bit, it turns out it's
the Pit, right?
It's the Pit. Yeah. It's a phone number there. But there's a moment where Langdon, says, hey, you were primary care here. Do you want to do it? And you have Whitaker in a moment of genuine, not weakness is the wrong word, but no, I actually, this is a show where everyone rises to the occasion. Yes, I can put more on my back. Yes, I can do this. And this is a moment where he's just, he says, I can't, I need you to do it. And I thought that was a really touching moment between those two. And
I guess the reason he's your Doctor of the Week is it takes some self-awareness and courage to recognize your own,
to pass something off in the context of a, a line of work in which I think the impulse would be no, that's mine. That's me. I'll take that burden.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think it's a moment where I thought it was really beautiful in the way that Langdon recognizes okay, I can take this one for you.
Yeah. I know this is a little bit probably outside of the realm of our Doctor of the Week, but I'll just say my Doctor of the Week is Dana. I know she's not technically a doctor, but hey, medical worker of the week, whatever we want to call it. And reason being, first of all, I think she handles Langdon very well this week, and Langdon's racked with guilt. And even though Dana didn't exactly, call Langdon and check in on him, she still cares about him, or at least wants him to be functioning admirably. But then also seeing Dana manipulate the system for her own ends. And she made Gus Varney's pulse ox drop. And no one knows what happened. It's like a medical, like, what happened? No one knows.
Ooh.
Dr. Robbie's like, what did you do? And she's like, I didn't do anything.
Get Dr. House on this one.
Right. And it's like, what happened there? And it's just nice to see, because usually we as the viewer are in with Dr. Robbie when he's doing that. Like when he's like doing the manipulation of, oh, hey, I'm going to just slash open this patient's leg so you can see blah, blah, blah. Or we're going to file this as a this in the insurance system so you can get treatment. Like we usually are in on it with him. Right. And this is a case where we don't actually see what happens. We don't actually know what occurs. But Dana has engineered it all. And I thought that was pretty cool, pretty badass of her. So that's why she is my doctor of the week.
Yeah. I also liked the little moment where like Dana is portrayed as a character that is on top of everything, right? Like hyper competent, overlooks no small detail, and she didn't check in on Dr. Langdon. And she seemed to actually sort of took that as like, yep, okay, yep, I fucked up. I should have done that. And I thought between that and like, wow, literally nobody reached out to him over the course of 10 months. A little surprised to have to be.
Let me just, let's talk about that for a second, Patrick. Which is, I think that you work in a field in which camaraderie is a more critical part of, or like a more common feature of the job than, let's say, other jobs. I'm gonna put that out there. Like, I have worked at jobs that are like that. And I have worked at jobs that are not like that.
Well,
and
this
like
is definitely a show where they're definitely not trying to establish any camaraderie between the people that are on the show.
That's
very cold to each other.
Well, I mean, look, I know you're being sarcastic, but I think that you're probably right that the fact that no one reached out to Langdon is some kind of indictment on him. But I do think this is a common thing. I see these stories on like online and on LinkedIn and wherever, like where corporate America tries to sell you this story of we're all this big family and we care about each other. And I think like something that's happened over the course of the last like 5, 10, 20 years or whatever is people realizing that, many aspects of corporate America are out for themselves. And in fact, many of the people in corporate America are out for themselves. And like, you think hey, I'm building all these like connections that are really meaningful. And sometimes you do, but sometimes no one checks in on you after 10 months, like no one you've ever, like once you're out of that environment, no one gives a shit. And I think this is yes, Langdon had this whole benzos thing, and that's, makes his case hard to generalize. But I do think that it is a thing where like sometimes people realize like, hey, what you think you're creating these like forming these bonds at work, but like actually when you're gone, like no one cares anymore. I think that is a feature for some people, not everyone, some people in modern corporate America. All right. I don't know if that was convincing at all, but
no, it wasn't. I think the Pitt takes an L. I think those people there should feel bad.
All right, fair enough, Patrick.
I think what most likely happened is what the more common explanation would be: everyone assumed that somebody else did it, and nobody did.
Sure.
It's not Dr. Robbie. Robbie, like you're the one that should have checked in on him.
I mean, my interpretation, honestly, was that they kind of held it against him. Like he's kind of like an outcast because he kind of put them in jeopardy in some ways, Anyway. Yeah. Fair enough. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.